If you've been told zinc is either a miracle cure for hair loss or totally useless, stay with me, because both of those ideas are wrong. And today, I want to clear up the biggest zinc myths that are confusing people and quietly slowing down real hair regrowth. This is one of those nutrients that sounds simple, but when you look at the science, it's anything but basic. Here's the first big myth: more zinc means more hair. That sounds logical, but it's not how biology works. Zinc is essential for hair growth because it's deeply involved in cell division, protein synthesis, and the function of the hair follicle itself. Your hair follicles are some of the fastest dividing cells in your body, so when zinc is low, hair growth is one of the first things to slow down. But flooding the body with zinc doesn't speed things up. In fact, excess zinc can actually create new problems, especially by blocking copper absorption. And copper is critical for collagen structure, blood vessel integrity, and pigmentation of hair, so taking too much zinc can paradoxically worsen hair quality over time. Another common myth is that zinc deficiency is rare. This one is especially misleading. Zinc deficiency is far more common than most people realize, even in people who eat healthy. Stress alone can deplete zinc. High carbohydrate diets increase zinc loss. Alcohol lowers zinc absorption. Certain medications reduce zinc levels. And if you have digestive issues, like low stomach acid or poor bile flow, you might be consuming zinc but not absorbing it. That's why blood tests often show zinc in the normal range, yet hair loss continues. Hair follicles are very sensitive, and they suffer long before full-blown deficiency shows up on lab work. Now let's talk about another myth. All zinc supplements are the same. This is absolutely false. The form of zinc matters a lot, especially for hair regrowth. Zinc oxide, for example, is cheap and commonly used, but it has very poor absorption. You might be taking it and getting very little benefit. Zinc sulfate can be harsh on the stomach and may cause nausea. Zinc gluconate is better tolerated, but absorption varies from person to person. Zinc picolinate and zinc L-methionine tend to be absorbed more efficiently because they're bound to molecules that help transport zinc into the cell. For hair follicles, bioavailability is key. If zinc can't get into the cells that are actively dividing, it can't do its job. There's also a big misunderstanding about what zinc actually does for hair. Many people think zinc directly creates hair. It doesn't. Zinc acts more like a manager behind the scenes. It activates enzymes that control DNA replication in hair follicle cells. It supports keratin production, which is the main structural protein in hair. It helps regulate oil glands in the scalp, which is why zinc deficiency is often associated with dandruff and scalp inflammation. And it plays a role in immune balance, which is critical because many hair loss conditions involve low-grade inflammation around the follicle. When zinc is adequate, the environment around the hair root becomes much more favorable for growth. Another myth that needs to go is the idea that zinc only helps if your hair loss is severe. In reality, zinc is often most effective in the early stages. When shedding increases, hair becomes thinner, or growth slows down. Once follicles become severely miniaturized, nutrients alone may not be enough. But when zinc is corrected early, it can help normalize the hair cycle, reduce excessive shedding, and support stronger regrowth. That's why zinc is so important in prevention, not just damage control. Let's also address the myth that zinc works alone. Hair regrowth is never about a single nutrient. Zinc interacts closely with protein intake, vitamin A, B vitamins, and trace minerals like copper and iron. For example, zinc is required to activate vitamin A, which is essential for epithelial tissue and hair follicle function. Without enough zinc, vitamin A doesn't work properly, even if your intake is high. Zinc also supports thyroid hormone conversion, and the thyroid plays a major role in hair growth speed and thickness. So when zinc is low, hair loss can show up indirectly through hormonal and metabolic pathways. Now here's an important point most people miss. Taking zinc without addressing the cause of zinc loss is like pouring water into a leaky bucket. Chronic stress, high insulin levels, poor digestion, and inflammatory diets all increase zinc demand. If those factors aren't addressed, zinc supplementation may only give temporary results. The real science shows that zinc works best when the body's overall environment supports absorption and retention. Finally, let's clear up the biggest misconception of all, that zinc is a quick fix. Hair regrowth is slow because hair follicles follow a cycle. Even when zinc status improves, it can take weeks to months before you see visible changes. What usually happens first is reduced shedding, improved scalp health, and stronger texture in new growth. That's a good sign the follicles are responding. Consistency matters far more than high doses or short-term use. So the real takeaway is this: zinc is not magic, and it's not useless. It's a foundational mineral that hair follicles depend on, but only when it's used correctly, in the right form, in the right amount, and within a supportive nutritional environment. When you understand that, zinc stops being a myth and starts becoming a strategic tool for healthier, stronger hair. Zinc plays a foundational role in hair regrowth, but to really understand why, we have to move past the oversimplified idea that zinc grows hair directly. That's not how the body works. Zinc doesn't act like a switch you flip and suddenly hair starts growing. It works more like a control center mineral, regulating multiple processes that hair follicles absolutely depend on to function normally. When zinc is adequate, the hair follicle environment is stable, efficient, and protected. When zinc is low or imbalanced, hair follicles are among the first tissues to suffer. One of the most critical roles of zinc in hair regrowth is its involvement in cell division. Hair follicles are some of the fastest dividing structures in the human body. Every time a new hair shaft is produced, cells in the hair matrix are rapidly multiplying. Zinc is required for DNA synthesis and replication, which means without enough zinc, these rapidly dividing follicle cells slow down or become dysfunctional. When that happens, hair growth shifts from strong, thick strands to thinner, weaker hair, and eventually into increased shedding. This is why zinc deficiency often shows up first as diffuse hair thinning rather than sudden bald patches. Zinc is also deeply involved in protein synthesis, especially keratin production. Keratin is the primary structural protein that makes up your hair. If keratin production is compromised, the hair shaft becomes fragile, brittle, and prone to breakage. Many people confuse breakage with hair loss, but they're closely connected. Weak keratin structure can make hair appear thinner even if follicles are still active. Zinc acts as a cofactor for enzymes that assemble amino acids into keratin. Without zinc, that assembly line slows down. So even if you're eating enough protein, your body may not be able to properly convert it into strong hair fibers if zinc levels are inadequate. Another major but often overlooked function of zinc is its role in regulating scalp inflammation. Chronic, low-grade inflammation around hair follicles is one of the most common hidden drivers of hair loss. Zinc helps stabilize immune responses and reduces excessive inflammatory signaling. When zinc is low, the immune system becomes more reactive, and hair follicles can become unintended targets. This is especially relevant in conditions like telogen effluvium, stress-related hair loss, and even androgen-related thinning, where inflammation quietly damages follicle health over time. Adequate zinc helps calm this inflammatory environment, allowing follicles to stay in the growth phase longer. Zinc also plays a key role in regulating oil glands in the scalp. The sebaceous glands attached to hair follicles produce sebum, which protects and lubricates the hair and scalp. When zinc is deficient, these glands can become dysregulated, leading to either excessive oiliness or extreme dryness. Both conditions can interfere with normal hair growth. Too much oil can clog follicles and increase inflammatory byproducts, while too little oil can compromise the scalp barrier, making follicles more vulnerable to irritation and damage. Zinc helps keep this balance intact, which is why zinc deficiency is often associated with dandruff, flaky scalp, and itching. Now, here's where things get misunderstood. Because zinc is so important, many people assume that taking more zinc will accelerate hair regrowth. This is where problems begin. The body tightly regulates zinc levels for a reason. Excess zinc doesn't supercharge hair follicles. It disrupts mineral balance. One of the biggest risks of high-dose zinc supplementation is copper depletion. Zinc and copper compete for absorption in the intestines. When zinc intake is too high for too long, copper absorption drops. Copper is essential for collagen formation, blood vessel health, and proper oxygen delivery to tissues, including the scalp. Copper is so involved in melanin production, which affects hair pigmentation. Low copper can contribute to weaker hair structure and premature graying. Copper is also critical for maintaining the integrity of connective tissue around hair follicles. Hair follicles are anchored in the scalp by a complex collagen-rich matrix. If copper levels fall, collagen cross-linking weakens and the follicle's structural support declines. This doesn't usually cause immediate hair loss, which is why people miss it, but over time it can contribute to weaker attachment of the hair shaft and increased shedding. So while zinc deficiency can cause hair loss, excess zinc can quietly undermine the very structures that keep hair healthy. Another issue with excessive zinc is its effect on immune balance. While zinc deficiency increases inflammation, too much zinc can suppress certain immune functions. The immune system requires balance, not extremes. When immune regulation is off, scalp health can deteriorate, increasing susceptibility to infections, irritation, and delayed healing around hair follicles. This creates an environment where hair regrowth is less likely, not more. Zinc also influences hormone metabolism, which directly affects hair growth. Zinc is involved in the conversion of thyroid hormones, particularly the conversion of T4 to the active T3 hormone. Thyroid hormones regulate the speed of hair growth and the duration of the growth phase. When zinc is low, thyroid hormone activation can slow, leading to sluggish hair growth and increased shedding. But again, excess zinc doesn't push thyroid function higher. It can interfere with other minerals like selenium and iron that also support thyroid health. Hair growth depends on harmony, not force. Another important point is that zinc works inside the cell, not just in the bloodstream. Many people rely on blood tests to assess zinc status, but serum zinc levels are tightly controlled and don't always reflect what's happening inside tissues like hair follicles. You can have normal blood zinc and still have functional zinc deficiency at the cellular level. Stress, inflammation, and insulin resistance can all impair zinc transport into cells. This means hair follicles may be starved for zinc even when intake looks adequate on paper. This is why the form of zinc matters so much. Zinc needs to be bioavailable to enter cells efficiently. Poorly absorbed forms may increase blood levels slightly without adequately nourishing tissues. Meanwhile, high doses of highly absorbable zinc taken without balance can overshoot and create secondary deficiencies. The goal is not maximum zinc, but optimal zinc delivery. Another layer to this is oxidative stress. Hair follicles are sensitive to oxidative damage because of their high metabolic activity. Zinc is a component of antioxidant enzymes, including superoxide dismutase. These enzymes neutralize free radicals that can damage follicle cells and DNA. When zinc is low, oxidative stress increases around the follicle, accelerating aging of the hair-producing cells. This contributes to thinner hair, slower regrowth, and shorter growth cycles. But again, antioxidant systems work in networks. Zinc needs copper, manganese, and adequate protein to function properly in these enzymes. Zinc also influences signaling pathways that determine whether a hair follicle stays in the growth, ASE, or transitions into the resting phase. When zinc is deficient, follicles are more likely to prematurely exit the growth phase. This leads to increased shedding weeks or months later. Correcting zinc deficiency can help normalize this signaling, but it takes time because hair cycles move slowly. This is why people often notice reduced shedding before they see visible regrowth. One of the most important concepts to understand is that hair follicles are not a priority tissue for survival. When the body senses stress, nutrient deficiency, or imbalance, it redirects resources to vital organs. Hair growth becomes optional. Zinc deficiency sends a signal that resources are limited. The body responds by slowing non-essential processes like hair production. Simply adding zinc without addressing the stressors that cause the deficiency may not fully restore hair growth. Diet also plays a major role here. High sugar and refined carbohydrate intake increases zinc loss through the urine. Chronic high insulin levels impair zinc transport. Alcohol reduces zinc absorption. Digestive issues reduce zinc uptake. So even if zinc intake increases, losses may remain high. This is why people can take zinc supplements for months with minimal improvement if the underlying causes of zinc depletion are not addressed. It's also important to recognize that zinc interacts closely with vitamin A. zinc is required to convert vitamin A into its active form. Active vitamin A regulates epithelial tissue, including the lining of hair follicles. Without zinc, vitamin A cannot properly support follicle differentiation and growth. This creates a situation where hair follicles are structurally compromised. Even when vitamin intake appears sufficient. So when we say zinc supports hair regrowth by regulating cell division, keratin production, and scalp inflammation, but excess zinc can block copper and worsen hair health, that statement captures a much deeper reality. Zinc is essential, but it must exist within balance. Too little zinc slows hair growth, weakens structure, increases inflammation, and disrupts hormone signaling. Too much zinc disrupts copper, collagen, immune balance, and long-term follicle integrity. The real science behind zinc and hair regrowth isn't about megadoses or quick fixes. It's about restoring a mineral environment where hair follicles can do what they're designed to do. When zinc is optimized, not maximized, hair follicles regain the ability to divide efficiently, produce strong keratin, maintain a healthy scalp environment, and stay in the growth phase longer. That's when zinc stops being a myth and becomes a powerful science-backed ally in hair regrowth. Zinc deficiency, being common and often hidden, is one of the most misunderstood pieces of the hair loss puzzle. And it's exactly why so many people feel frustrated after doing everything right and still seeing thinning or shedding. On paper, their diet looks fine, their blood work looks normal, yet their hair keeps falling. The problem isn't always how much zinc you consume. It's how much your body can actually access, use, and keep, especially at the level of the hair follicle. Let's start with the idea that zinc deficiency is rare. This belief comes mainly from population averages and outdated assumptions. In reality, zinc deficiency is widespread worldwide, not just in developing regions, but also in people who eat plenty of calories. Zinc is a trace mineral, which means the body needs it in small amounts but relies on it for hundreds of enzymatic reactions. Because the body doesn't store large reserves of zinc the way it stores fat-soluble vitamins, zinc status can drop quietly and quickly under the right conditions. One of the biggest drivers of hidden zinc deficiency is stress. Physical stress, emotional stress, sleep deprivation, overtraining, illness, and even chronic worrying all increase zinc demand. Zinc is heavily used by the nervous system and the immune system. When stress hormones rise, zinc is pulled away from peripheral tissues like hair follicles and redirected towards survival functions. Hair growth immediately becomes non-essential. You can be consuming enough zinc, but stress alone can create a functional deficiency at the follicle level. Another major factor is diet composition. Even people who eat healthy can struggle with zinc status depending on what their diet is built around. Diets high in refined carbohydrates increase urinary zinc loss. High sugar intake increases insulin, and insulin alters zinc transport and excretion. Vegetarian and vegan diets often contain plenty of zinc on paper, but plant compounds like phytates bind zinc in the gut and prevent absorption. Whole grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds are nutritious, but when they dominate the diet without proper preparation, zinc bioavailability drops significantly. This doesn't cause immediate symptoms, which is why it goes unnoticed until hair starts thinning. Digestive health is another silent factor. Zinc absorption depends heavily on stomach acid and proper digestive enzyme activity. Low stomach acid, which is far more common than people realize, dramatically reduces zinc absorption. Conditions like bloating, reflux, or chronic indigestion often coexist with zinc deficiency. Poor bile flow also interferes with mineral absorption. So someone can take zinc supplements faithfully and still absorb only a fraction of what they're consuming. Hair follicles feel that deficit long before major symptoms appear elsewhere. Medications quietly contribute as well. Certain antacids, acid blockers, diuretics, and even some common anti-inflammatory drugs can reduce zinc absorption or increase zinc excretion. Oral contraceptives and hormone-modifying medications can alter zinc balance too. Again, this doesn't trigger an alarm right away. It slowly drains zinc availability while hair follicles steadily weaken. Now let's talk about blood tests, because this is where many people get falsely reassured. Serum zinc levels are tightly regulated by the body. The body works very hard to keep blood zinc within a narrow range because zinc is critical for survival. When intake drops or losses increase, Zinc is pulled from tissues to maintain blood levels, hair follicle. Skin and nails are some of the first tissues to be sacrificed to protect vital organs. This means you can have a perfectly normal zinc blood test while your hair follicles are already zinc-starved. Hair loss is often an early warning sign, not a late-stage symptom. Hair follicles are extremely sensitive to nutrient imbalances because of their rapid growth cycle. They need constant input of zinc to maintain DNA replication, protein synthesis, and antioxidant defense. When zinc delivery drops even slightly, follicles respond by shortening the growth phase or entering the resting phase early. The shedding you see today often reflects a zinc problem that started months earlier. Another reason zinc deficiency stays hidden is that its symptoms are nonspecific. Fatigue, weakened immunity, slow wound healing, changes in taste or smell, dry skin, and hair thinning don't immediately scream zinc deficiency to most people. These symptoms overlap with stress, aging, hormone shifts, and lifestyle factors. Hair loss gets blamed on genetics or hormones, while the underlying mineral imbalance goes unaddressed. Inflammation also plays a huge role in functional zinc deficiency. Chronic low-grade inflammation increases zinc demand while simultaneously impairing zinc transport into cells. Inflammatory signaling molecules alter zinc transporter proteins, reducing zinc availability where it's needed most. Hair follicles sit right at the interface between immune activity and tissue growth, making them especially vulnerable. This is why people with inflammatory conditions often experience hair thinning even when nutrient intake looks sufficient. Insulin resistance further complicates things. Zinc is involved in insulin storage and signaling, and high insulin levels disrupt zinc balance. As insulin resistance develops, zinc metabolism becomes less efficient. Zinc may be present in the body but poorly distributed. Hair follicles end up on the losing end of that redistribution. Age is another factor. As we get older, zinc absorption efficiency declines. Appetite changes, digestive capacity decreases, and medication use increases. Hair thinning is often dismissed as normal aging, but in many cases, declining zinc availability plays a meaningful role. Correcting zinc status doesn't reverse time, but it can significantly improve the quality and density of remaining hair. What makes this even more challenging is that hair follicles don't just need zinc occasionally, they need it consistently. Zinc is involved in every phase of the hair cycle. Short-term intake spikes don't compensate for long-term insufficiency. This is why people may take zinc for a few weeks, see no change, and assume it doesn't work. In reality, the follicles are still recovering from months or years of suboptimal zinc delivery. Another misunderstood point is that zinc deficiency doesn't always exist in isolation. It often occurs alongside other subtle imbalances. Low protein intake, low vitamin A activation, poor iron utilization, and trace mineral imbalances frequently overlap. Zinc deficiency can worsen these issues, and these issues can worsen zinc deficiency. Hair follicles respond to the combined stress, not just one missing nutrient. Hair shedding caused by zinc deficiency often follows a delayed pattern. The follicle enters the resting phase, but the hair doesn't fall out immediately. Weeks or months later, shedding increases. By the time hair loss becomes obvious, the original zinc issue may feel disconnected. This delay is one of the reasons zinc-related hair loss is so frequently misdiagnosed. It's also important to understand that hair follicles compete with other tissues for zinc. During illness, injury, infection, or intense physical stress, zinc is preferentially used by the immune system and repair mechanisms. Hair growth pauses. This is a survival strategy, not a malfunction. But if stress becomes chronic, hair follicles remain deprived for too long, and regrowth becomes slower and weaker. Correcting hidden zinc deficiency requires more than just supplementation. It requires improving absorption, reducing excessive losses, calming inflammation, and supporting overall metabolic health. When these factors improve, zinc delivery to hair follicles improves even if intake stays the same. This is why some people see hair regrowth without dramatically increasing zinc intake. They fix the leak instead of just adding more water. So when we say zinc deficiency is common and often hidden, and that blood tests may appear normal while hair follicles are already affected, we're describing a biological reality that standard testing often misses. Hair loss is not always a mystery or a genetic destiny. In many cases, it's an early signal that the body is struggling to meet the zinc demands of fast-growing tissues. When zinc status is restored at the cellular level, not just in the bloodstream, hair follicle Let's regain their ability to stay in the growth phase, produce stronger hair shafts, and resist inflammatory stress. Shedding slows, texture improves. Regrowth becomes more noticeable over time, not because zinc is magic, but because the follicle finally has access to what it's been missing all along. The idea that the form and absorption of zinc matter more than high doses, and that zinc works best as part of a balanced nutritional system, not a quick fix, is where most of the real science gets ignored. This is also where many people unintentionally sabotage their own hair regrowth efforts. They hear that zinc helps hair, so they take the strongest supplement they can find, assume more is better, and wait for results. When nothing dramatic happens, they conclude zinc doesn't work. In reality, the problem isn't zinc itself, it's how it's being used. Let's start with absorption, because if zinc doesn't get absorbed, it doesn't matter how much you take. Zinc has to pass through the digestive system, cross the intestinal lining, enter the bloodstream, and then be transported into cells. Hair follicles don't respond to zinc sitting in the gut or floating briefly in the blood. They respond to zinc inside the cell, where DNA replication, enzyme activity, and protein synthesis actually occur. This is why the chemical form of zinc makes such a difference. Some forms of zinc are poorly absorbed. Zinc oxide is a common example. It's inexpensive and widely used, but it has low bioavailability. Much of it passes through the body unused. People may take zinc oxide for months, see no improvement in hair, and assume zinc doesn't help. What's really happening is that the follicles never received enough usable zinc in the first place. Zinc sulfate is another form that absorbs better than oxide, but often causes stomach irritation, which can limit how consistently people take it. Nausea alone can derail long-term use. More bioavailable forms of zinc are bound to compounds that help escort zinc across the intestinal wall. Zinc picolinate is bound to picolinic acid, which enhances transport into cells. Zinc L-methionine is bound to an amino acid, allowing it to follow amino acid absorption pathways. These forms tend to raise intracellular zinc levels more effectively, which is what hair follicles actually need. This doesn't mean they're magic. It means they're more efficient at doing what zinc is supposed to do. But even the best form of zinc won't work if the digestive system isn't prepared to absorb it. Zinc absorption depends heavily on stomach acid. Low stomach acid reduces mineral ionization, making zinc harder to absorb. This is incredibly common, especially in people under chronic stress or those using acid-suppressing medications. Poor bile flow also interferes with mineral absorption. So someone can take a highly absorbable form of zinc and still get limited benefit if digestion isn't working properly. This is why high doses are not the solution. Increasing the dose doesn't fix absorption. It often makes things worse. Excess zinc competes with other minerals for absorption, especially copper. Over time, high-dose zinc can create a secondary copper deficiency, which negatively affects collagen, blood vessels, and connective tissue in the scalp. Hair follicles rely on a strong collagen matrix and proper blood flow. Undermining copper status quietly weakens that foundation. Hair regrowth is not driven by one nutrient acting alone. Zinc is part of a network. It interacts with protein intake, vitamin A activation, B vitamins, iron metabolism, and trace minerals like copper and selenium. For example, zinc is required to activate vitamin A. Without zinc, vitamin A cannot support epithelial tissue properly, including hair follicles. So, someone can have adequate vitamin A intake and still experience hair thinning if zinc is insufficient or poorly absorbed. Zinc also supports thyroid hormone activation, and thyroid hormones regulate how fast hair grows and how long it stays in the growth phase. But thyroid health also depends on selenium-iodine balance and adequate calories. If zinc is taken in isolation while other factors are ignored, the results will always be limited. Hair follicles respond to the overall metabolic environment, not a single supplement. Another mistake people make is expecting zinc to override lifestyle factors that actively deplete it. High sugar intake increases zinc loss. Chronic stress increases zinc demand. Alcohol reduces zinc absorption. Inflammation impairs zinc transport into cells. You can't out-supplement these factors indefinitely. Zinc works best when losses are reduced and absorption is supported. This is why some people see better results from moderate zinc intake combined with dietary changes than from megadoses taken alongside the same habits that cause deficiency in the first place. Timing and consistency also matter. Hair follicles operate on long cycles. Zinc doesn't trigger instant growth. What it does is help normalize the environment so follicles can re-enter and stay in the growth. Asa. This takes time. The first sign zinc is working is often reduced shedding, not new growth. Then scalp health improves. Then hair texture changes. Visible regrowth comes later. People who jump from supplement to supplement never give follicles enough time to respond. Another overlooked issue is competition at the cellular level. Zinc uses transporter proteins to enter cells. Inflammatory states and insulin resistance alter how these transporters function. This means zinc may be present in the body but poorly delivered to hair follicles. Addressing inflammation and metabolic health improves zinc utilization without increasing the dose. This is why zinc works best as part of a system-wide approach. Protein intake is especially important here. Zinc-dependent enzymes build keratin from amino acids. If protein intake is low or poorly digested, zinc can't fully do its job. Hair regrowth stalls even if zinc levels improve. This leads people to blame zinc when the real limitation is structural building material. There's also the issue of balance over time. Hair follicles are sensitive to fluctuations. Short bursts of high zinc followed by long gaps don't support stable regrowth. Consistent, appropriate intake allows follicles to maintain steady enzyme activity and growth signaling. This is another reason why hair growth stacks often fail. They focus on intensity instead of stability. The idea of zinc as a quick fix comes from misunderstanding hair biology. Hair is a long-term project. Follicles respond slowly but consistently when conditions are right. Zinc doesn't force growth. It removes bottlenecks. It allows normal processes to resume. When zinc status improves within a balanced nutritional environment, hair growth becomes more predictable and resilient. When people approach zinc strategically, choosing an absorbable form, supporting digestion, avoiding excessive dosing, and addressing the factors that cause zinc loss, the results are very different. Shedding decreases. New growth becomes stronger. Hair cycles normalize. Not because zinc is overpowering the system, but because it's finally working in harmony with it. So the real science behind zinc and hair regrowth isn't about chasing the highest dose or the most dramatic claim. It's about understanding that hair follicles are part of a living system. Zinc supports that system when it's absorbed, balanced, and integrated properly. When it's used intelligently, zinc becomes a reliable ally. When it's used recklessly, it becomes another reason people think nothing works. That's the difference between supplementation and strategy. And when it comes to hair regrowth, strategy always wins.